Hi.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Wendy.
It's been a long time.
I know. I
It's
know. It's just
it's
been, I mean, we're talking about decades.
12 years ago was my last cover on you for Cowboys and Indians
Oh,
magazine.
oh, and you did that.
Yes,
didn't
yes,
remember that you did because we had met before that. Hmm?
right. Yeah, we had. But I did that. If you remember you and me and Greg Brown and that wonderful photographer, and we sort of traipsed around Malibu with that photo shoot. And I want to tell you, Jim, that
Hmm.
cover got such incredible response. I mean, I had one woman that did a letter to the editor to me saying, like a fine wine, Jim Brolin just gets better with age.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, it's funny. I was telling somebody today that it's been so tough because I love home. I mean, you should see what I'm looking at now. It looks like
I
I'm
can
on
see a
a cruise
little bit
ship.
of it. Looks beautiful. Yeah,
Well,
I
no,
remember I was there.
I'm going to
Yes, I
show
was
you
there.
something. Like we're on a cruise ship.
Oh, that is so fabulous.
Catalina out in that direction, and Long Beach is straight in front of you, and the whole Malibu coast is like a big bite out of the land. So we look straight across at Santa Monica across the water.
Hmm.
We're looking.
And
I'm
you
looking
were
up.
not at all affected by the fires, were you? Thank goodness.
Well, it was close enough
Personally,
to where we were getting scared.
yeah. Oh,
But I could see the they had an east wind that was supposedly blowing in our face, but I saw it blowing straight out to sea. So I thought that's good.
yeah. I had a very good friend that lost everything in the Palisades, and a
Oh,
beloved niece who lost her home in Altadena.
wow. Well,
Yeah,
did
really.
did you did you talk to Caitlin at all about us? My publicist, Caitlin Green,
Yeah. As far as what goes.
she lost her home,
Oh, she
and
didn't tell me.
three of the
Oh,
family lost
geez.
their home within blocks. Four houses, their whole history.
Oh, I am
Hmm.
so sorry to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And she's such a sweetheart.
She seems like a, yeah, I've really enjoyed working with
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
Well, okay, my dear. What I'm thinking is you've had, such an amazing career, such a varied career. Your audiences have responded so much to your characters, both on television and in movie. I want to kind of first highlight that before we get into horses.
Mm.
And I want to start with Ransom Canyon. I actually was able to see all 8 episodes, and it was so wonderful to see you in a Western again as kind of a curmudgeon, kind of Cap the curmudgeon,
It
and talk
really
about
is.
that and why what turned you on to that role?
Well, it's as you saw, it's a smaller role now, and I walked away. I turned it down twice, and then they
Uh-huh.
came here and offered me a lot of control of what I would like to do with a new character, and that backfired on me a little bit because I signed right away and said, "All right, let's go to New Mexico and do it." And it didn't turn out quite like I wanted, but still, it's another great epic series. It's as you saw it, or you may have seen that it's a romantic
Yeah.
novel,
Yes,
basically.
absolutely. I've heard that it's a base, and there are going to be lots of them. They're kind of based on a whole series of romantic
Yeah,
novels.
and so the show's not quite as romantic and as much of a ladies' book series as the book series.
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
would start reading the books and it lost me a little bit. Not that I'm not into good stuff, but I really, really enjoyed going to Albuquerque and living in Santa Fe and driving back and forth every day. And I just love the country, and I've had 10,000 days on a set now. I call myself quantity while my wife is quality. She's done 16 movies. I've done 97 and
Uh-huh.
700 hours of television. So right
And
now, after, COVID, it's quite silent. It's the business is morphed, and I really love directing. I always have. I
right, I
started
remember
out,
that.
I was with my movie camera at
Right,
15.
right.
Got pushed on the other side of the camera, which I was so shy about, And now years later, I must say some of my best days of my life are just being on a set. I don't care whether I'm making coffee or setting a light or whatever. I'll do anything just to be around that kind of creativity where everybody shows up, stuff on a page. Nobody knows anybody else. Nobody quite knows what we're saying or how we're going to say it. And it all ends out. And it's kind of, I should be so bored with it at this point, and I'm not. I'm more excited than ever.
Well, you have great characters. I loved your relationship with Ella. She was so, she just doted on you. I mean, and I won't key the audience into that last episode, but it was a wonderful relationship between the two of
Yeah,
you.
and Mary Anley is just a terrific person, and she's married a guy, and they just bought a big spread in Texas herself, and I'm just hoping she has a career because I want to see more of her. I want everybody to see more of her. And Jack
Hmm.
Schumacher, a
Right,
new young star,
right.
which
But obviously I loved Minka and Josh. I followed their careers as well. So I thought it was
yeah.
a really, really nice ensemble.
This is Josh's time also, I think. In his whole career, he's really ripe now, like good fruit, ready to pick.
And he really, really looks good and looks like he's,
Yeah, doesn't he?
yeah, a
Heck,
little
me with the
intense,
blue
but that's
eyes.
okay. Let's talk because as I said, I loved when I was a little girl, I loved watching them Monrose. And because I was probably
Really?
10 when I was watching the Monrose. I don't
Right.
really remember your character, but I know that you rode and you played opposite Barbara Hershey, who was wonderful. And so it's interesting how you kind of started your career on horseback. And
Hmm.
now I mean, you're not finished with your career, but we've gone full circle and you're on horseback again. Talk a little bit about the Monroes.
Oh, well, the I was just a lucky kid on my second or third year signed at Fox. And sometimes I was just dubbing people's voices. Sometimes I'd go on a movie for a week, but I had one word, one line, and
Hmm.
they were paying all of us young actors the old MGM way, thinking, well, maybe one will be a star and we'll get our money back. Although I was netting $93 a week, and it was so much more than I was making parking cars.
Hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
also somewhere to go every week. And it was also, to me, I went, well, now that I'm in the studio, I'll just change jobs. Now I can be a director and not have to get up in front of everybody and do all that ego stuff. And anyway, I'm sent off to let's see, we were at the big ski area at Wyoming where Harrison Ford lives. Um, anyway,
Oh, yeah.
Jackson,
Jackson Hole.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Okay.
that's where we shot. And for
Uh-huh.
a kid who had a horse when he was a kid for a while, I just thought this is just the greatest ever. I was there for I think it was there for a month. It was like Yellowstone. We were the next door neighbors who wanted the land and
Hmm.
these people off our land.
Okay.
All these shows are
Okay.
about land, right?
And you
And
rode and you were young and hot in your
yeah, and
20s.
so we were the bad group. I was one of the three or four sons next door who was supposedly one of the bad guys.
Okay.
But to Fox, it was just a way of getting their $93 back. We'll send this kid up there to do that role and do, you know, two lines a week if he's lucky. But the whole
Hmm.
thing was I was there, we were shooting, it was Wyoming, and
Right.
it was just like for me, it was the greatest gift ever. But it
And
was I think they went, this is too expensive. They moved us back into a stage with the trees and hills behind us painted in a stage on the Fox Western Studios. And like that was when I sort of knew the beginning, the end was coming, of the show.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it didn't last very long after that because it wasn't the same.
But as I said, I really enjoyed it. I've had horses since I was 10, and I think I was about 10 when that came on, and I just went, a Western with a girl, with a female lead.
Yeah, yeah. and I remember Michael, not Saracen. He was a famous director's son, Michael Anderson Jr. He
Right.
was the
Okay.
lead with Barbara Hershey.
Right.
And I remember this was a real lesson to me because he would come in and go, "What are we doing today?" And I go, what do you mean? I have two lines and I've spent 2 weeks trying to learn them, you know, and he's going, and he has pages of dialogue, you know. Well, you mean, are you kidding me? You don't know what we're doing today? No, we're doing the scene in the bar and you come in and you take over and oh, okay, where is that? And he'd look at these pages for 2, 3 minutes, throw
Hmm.
them down and be letter perfect. But he never had any idea what he was saying. That was the lesson. That a guy can learn lines and have them down perfect and not be able to deliver because he didn't uh, absorb any of the content, you know.
Right. Well,
It-
then a couple of years later, you kind of traded that horse in for a motorcycle, Jim, and you
yeah,
were again, the young hot one on Marcus Welby MD, which garnered you both an Emmy and a Golden Globe. Talk a little bit about Stephen Kiley.
I got an Emmy for the pilot, as a matter of fact. I don't think anybody's ever
Yeah.
done that with a
Yep.
kid, a lucky kid on there. And I had left Fox, and 3 weeks later, I got a call to go visit somebody for a kind of another kind of contract deal, but this was specifically for me over at Universal. And I looked at
Uh-huh.
it and I thought, okay, yeah, okay, this is good. Next step. And 3 weeks after that, they said, well, we got this pilot we want you to test for. I said, what do you mean test? And we went into stage with good crew, great cameraman, and Robert Young. And next thing I heard, well, you're the guy they chose. You're going to be on television every week for at least a year now. 20 back then, I think it was 29 episodes a year. 1 hour episodes. And
I know, I remember that. Now it's 8.
mhm. Yeah, no, it's 8.
Now it's
But
8.
it's like a good long movie if the story is right. That's the thing. I have a trouble with some of this content following stories,
Hmm.
and of course, we're just wrapping up 1923. I know we're late doing it, but we're looking how wonderful that Taylor Sheridan not only does dialogue, but make sure the stories are something, you jump to now. You're curious about the next scene. You're not just waiting for them to finish talking, which is a lot of these series are waiting for them to finish
Right.
talking so we can see what happens next. So as a director now and writer, I'm very concerned with that. But I legitimize the motorcycle. The motorcyclists were Hell's Angels in generally, even though there were lots of guys
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
like. But they said that I legitimized the motorcycle for the first time in history, and of course nobody remembers that. But I fought them on, but it was a California law. I fought them on having to wear the helmet every time.
Hmm.
I wanted to be, I didn't want to look like an idiot. So I finally looked like an idiot, and I had a suit and tie and everything on this. Uh, I remember Steve McQueen in was it The Great Escape? Yeah, he had a British Triumph, and Bud Ekins was the big. Everybody had a Triumph who was hip then. I said, "Oh, that's what I want to ride is a Triumph." So that was the only cool part of my character to me, other than the fact that I
Well, it
got,
lasted for a long time.
huh? It did
Wasn't it
about
7 or 8 years
7 years.
it lasted?
Yeah,
Yeah.
130 episodes or something, I think. 120.
Yep, as I said.
Uh,
Well, that was when 7 seasons was that. And 7 seasons now is like, what, 8 times 7, a whole different thing.
yeah, yeah.
48.
And every show with
And then you went
different
to
guests and different stars and everything. Now the 8 hours and 10 hours are pretty much the same people, and it's like a movie that's kind of
right, exactly.
elongated.
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because I've done a lot of work with Taylor Sheridan. I actually profiled both Julia Schlepfer and Brandon Sklenar, who played Spencer and
I'm a
Alexander.
big fan. I'm a big fan of Brandon. He's got a picture coming out this Friday, and I'm just hoping he's a movie star, you know.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. He's lovely. And so, yeah, I've been working with in that universe for about 7 years. So
Mm,
it's been exciting. But then
great.
we went, let's talk a little bit about hotel. You were a very different character. You were Peter and very debonair manager of a high class hotel, and you were with Connie Selica, who I loved. So talk a little
Right.
bit about that character.
Well, you know, after Marcus Welby, I kept telling him, I want to do movies, you guys. I'm here to do movies. I'm
Hmm.
not here to do television. I told you that. And they said, yeah, well, read your contract, buddy, you know. And so somehow I pushed a legal edge and got them to let me go over to MGM to do Westworld.
Which was wonderful. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it was a big hit. And then I did
yeah,
Skyjack with Charlton Heston, and then I did The Car, which was a cult hit horror movie,
yeah, yeah.
and then Gable and Lombard, and then Capricorn One, and then Night of the Juggler, which again is going to be reissued on the internet soon, which is a good movie. I don't think too many people have seen. And then I played that jerk in Amityville
Okay.
he got a
Yeah.
little weird, and I don't think anybody knew
Well, the
what.
movie was a little weird, Jim.
Hmm?
The movie was a little weird.
I know, but I think my character was so different than the nice Dr. Kiley
Hmm.
or the hotel manager that you could depend on totally.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that I think, you know, sometimes I wonder, unless you want that kind of a career and you get lined up to do one movie after the other, that it confuses even producers, you know, and directors, because I didn't have an offer for a couple of years, except for a stupid movie called The Hand, about guy's arm is cut off and the hand chases him for the rest of the movie.
I remember that. I think I saw that. Yep.
Oliver Stone's first movie that he
Yep.
directed.
Yep. I remember that. But I'm, but
And
I'm, I'm just going to digress a bit. I believe in Westworld you rode a horse also, didn't you? Didn't you ride? That was another
my own,
a role that
yeah,
you rode.
I had the ranch,
Yes, exactly.
I had the horse and cattle ranch in Paso Robles, and I brought my own
Yep.
horse, one horse, I think. You know, I always had I drove a pickup from the time I was 18 or 20, I think. And I always had a horse trailer behind it, whether it was empty or full. It was just easier than unhitching it and leaving it, you know. So it was no big deal. I said, well, no, I'll bring the horse down to MGM, the one I'm going to ride. They said, okay, you know. So that's the one I rode.
Well, let's talk a little bit about horses. I know that when you were growing up, you lived on a small ranch in Santa Monica, kind of the Santa Monica Hills, and you rode. I think your dad rode too, didn't he? And there was that kind of early, kind of young teenage time that you rode.
Yeah, it was for Benedict Canyon. It was a 7 acre property, and he was a developer. And I think he thought the horses would look good when we went to sell the place or something. So, but we
Uh-huh.
had the horses that I was, you know, I had to feed and clean up after for a couple of years, and that was my first kind of introduction to really taking care of a horse. And but I had been a follower of Roy Rogers and Gene Autry since I was a little tyke, you know. I mean, I would go put a hat on and put a gun on, you know, they knew I loved that
Yeah,
stuff. I'd
yeah,
spend
yeah.
all day on the weekends, all dressed
Yep.
up, you know. So, you know, for some reason I locked into that stuff, and then later on had fantasies of ever having that kind of a life. And it was in the middle of Marcus Welby that it was the third year where one day they said, I heard you moved to another place. And I said, yeah, I'm 4 hours away up in Central Coast by Cambria. You know, what'd you do that for? And I said, well, you know, that's what I'm going to do now. You know, Eastwood seems to fly back and forth. And I said, they said, well, gee, that really messes us up. So they gave me 3 or 4 days a week to work. They adjusted for me. We had a
Oh,
lot of
that's nice.
I had a
Yeah,
lot of power then, you know, it's
yeah.
interesting. You have periods where you have power and periods where you better recognize that you don't, and I literally, I had a little Porsche and I would just hightail I'd try and make it 3 hours and 40 minutes. It was about a
From
4.
Cambria to the studio, that's a 5-hour drive.
Well, not if you know the back ways and you go
Okay,
100 miles an hour on the back.
okay.
So anyway, I did that. And they said, well, also we got a little house. They had a hospital on the lot, and then they had a 1-bedroom house next to it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got this house we'll let you use. So for a couple of years, I had this house I stayed at if I was going to work again the next morning. But
Mm-hmm.
all my work was into 3 or 4 days a week, and the rest of the time I'm on the ranch 3 or 4 days a week with the horses, and I'd sleep in the barn waiting for the mare to bear this baby, and I mean that really became an important part of my life, and I learned my lines in the car on the way to work.
But before that, you
It's so
told me a
funny talking
story.
about it because I haven't talked about this in a
Oh,
long time.
talk to me about the time
Not
that
what you
you
do.
got your gelding at an auction and didn't have any place to put him, so you put him in your garage.
That was my first purchase of a
Yeah.
horse. Yeah. Went out to the Chino sale, and I guess they were selling this horse for dog food. When I look at it, that's a mighty pretty horse. It looks like one of those in the Rose Parade. Well, it was.
Uh-huh.
And I forget whether a rider got on it and showed it that if he just nudged it with his heel a little bit, it would walk side. Remember how the Rose Parade horses,
Yep. Prance
Albinos
sideways. Yeah,
for the
sure.
sheriff would
They
walk
still do.
sideways?
Yeah, they still
This
do.
one walked sideways. I said, that's it. $235, including new shoes before we left. The shoer was there. So, on the way home, I was so excited, but where are we going to take this? Where are we going to put it up for? I said, I don't know, in the garage, I guess. The poor horse is sliding around in its own extra, trying to stand
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
all this wet floor in the garage. It was something. And then I ended up finding a kind of a field out by Malibu Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
I turned him loose and had to chase him every time I wanted to ride. It was hard to chase, but once I got close enough, he was mine, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I got all my exercise before I even caught him every time. But
And
and
that was before
soon
Cambria,
after
right?
that, we rented a house with a corral out
Uh-huh.
in East Valley somewhere, And then I had a ranch in Chatsworth, 6 acres with 10 head on it at the time, thinking one of these days we got to get, I got to get out of here and have a real ranch. Then I don't know if I
Uh-huh.
told you this story. Then I kept reading in Western Horseman, Appaloosa Magazine, the New York Times. I get to New York. It's in the New York, an ad for this ranch, thinking this guy is one of the great bullshit writers in history, or this is some place I should see someday. And I kept seeing that for 6 months.
Uh-huh.
And one day I said, tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, we're going up there to take a look at this place. Well, I bought it in 20 minutes, drove in, and it was fat, had an airfield, because, I've been a pilot for 50 years. And it had 2 lakes, and it had a creek ran through it, bass fishing right there outside. And we moved lock, stock, and barrel. That's when the studio, gave me all this. So, because once I was there, I went,
Excuse me.
man, this is it. Can't wait to retire here.
So is that in San Luis Obispo? I'm trying to think near there.
Well, it's north of San Luis Obispo, about a half hour. Templeton, where
Right.
Eastwood used to shoot rawhide.
Yep. And
Paso Robles.
then you started to breed Appaloosas. Talk a little bit about that time in your life, in your horse life.
Yeah, I did. I got very interested in how unique they were, how mild they were in a tough situation. Their brains were, they didn't explode for some reason, that they were the nest bear's favorite horse. And where Appaloosas came from is Chinese emperors would own up to 40,000 Appaloosas at one time. And When the
Wow.
Spanish invaded China, they would take these most colorful horses and steal them. And then on the ships coming over, on the Spanish ships, there were lots of Appaloosas. Well, the American Indians saw these and thought the spirit of the horse was coming out on his hide, and they had to have them. So they stole them all from and bred them for a couple of hundred years. I just thought that whole history just knocked me out. And then every once in a while you see a movie like, Brando's The Appaloosa, movies like that where you saw an Appaloosa with look like a a whole white rump with a black bear paw this big on the back. And how do they? It's like art,
They're
So
so beautiful.
and then people started. There were separate at the fairgrounds. There were Appaloosa races,
Right.
and were quarter horse races, and there were longer races, and people were breeding them for that. And I said, okay, I'm going to start breeding, and I'm going to sell them for roping horses. I love the Bozell,
Uh-huh.
which is the Mexican way, the 4 years to train a horse just from a leather band around here, no bit in the mouth. So all you had to do was barely think about what you wanted from the horse, and eventually they were just so pliable and happy. To me, a trained dog and a trained horse are the happiest they've ever been. A lot of people might argue with that, but to
And there were
me,
so many people interested in your Appaloosas that Brier model horses
yeah,
did a model on one of them. I think it was Stud Spider.
Stud Spider was
Yeah.
my main, and he was a baby that was born in one of my stalls, and I had bought his mother, who looked very much like him, and she was national champion, Western and English. She won in both. And I bought her, and then she was the mother of Stud Spider, who I named after selling one of my young babies to a guy named Tony Joe White, who called me.
Uh-huh.
You got a horse there named Stud Spider? I said, yeah, well, I'd like to buy him for sale. And so anyway, we became great friends, and he had a lot of hit records, wrote a lot of Elvis songs, and oh, Tony, I miss him. He's not with us now.
Well, beautiful horse. I've seen photos of him and I've seen the Brier model horse and
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
beautiful
Then
horse.
Brier came to me and said, because I'd been on the cover of Appaloosa magazine with Stud
Right.
Spider. They said, we'd like to have this toy. I guess they've been making this toy now for 30, 40 years. They're still
Well, I got
making.
a quote from you for the 75th anniversary that I was story I was helping them with and because it sold so well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, as a
It
matter of
was
fact,
me.
I didn't know that it had
Yeah,
sold
yeah,
so well. To me, it was
yeah,
like
really. Yeah,
another
people still
thing,
talk
and
about
probably
it.
would be out of favor after a few years. But that's really nice to know, because I did correct them like 3 or 4 times, saying, no, that's not quite like he is. He got a little this, a little of that. The spot is this shape, not that shape. And so I was involved with them, in doing
Yeah,
that.
they talk about it still.
Yeah, I was proud
Oh,
of my baby.
Hollywood came to Briar. Hollywood came to. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of kind of reflective and introspective questions
Uh,
because we've known each other for so long. And probably a lot of our viewers don't know how deeply you have been involved in the horse culture and ranching for so many years.
mhm.
But you are frequently labeled with the characteristics of a cowboy. People think you're honest and you have a strong work ethic and you're dependable. And talk to me a little bit about what that means to you, about your audience identifying you to a cowboy.
Well, I have an old saying, that and $5 will get you a Starbucks.
Yes.
Um, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I've just been me, and I mean, I'm still horses turn my head, and I'll make a judgment on somebody's horse. Oh, this stuff. fine horse he's had, and I'll look and I said, well, that is pretty junky, but as long as they like it, it's okay with me. And I really got into the finite way a horse moves and the detail of his refinement, and let's say how the Spanish felt about their horses, where they used to say with the narrow face, they say, oh yeah, that horse could eat peanuts out of a Coke bottle, you know.
And might
That
have done
wasn't my
that.
kind of face. What?
I said it might have done that. It might have.
That wasn't my kind of shape of a beautiful horse, I mean,
Yeah.
I do appreciate the great big meaty quarter horse, and I bred a lot for quarter horses.
Mhm.
I would go out to Hemet and breed with thoroughbreds just to get different types of horses for different types of use, or racing or cowboying. I mean, when I left the ranch, I sold 64 head of horses and 100 head of cattle.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and even with the cattle, I learned to do a lot of the doctoring and whatever you had to do to the
Mhm.
males. Uh,
Was
to
that difficult to let go of that lifestyle?
Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, but I also believe that changes are just such a surprise, and life's too short to stay in the same boat. I never looked at a mandatory change as any kind of a death sentence. It's an opportunity. And I tell people that every time they have a problem and they're forced to give up something and go another direction, I just believe that is a gift, will be.
Do you ride much anymore? I know you did a little bit in Ransom Canyon.
No, no, yeah, just, in a matter of fact, the last few years, I mean, I could go, there's a couple of rental places around Malibu. I could go up in the mountain, but it just seems like doesn't riding take up a lot of your time?
A lot of my time. I only
I
do it.
just,
I board my horse at a board facility. It's about 2 miles away from where I live.
yeah.
I live in Colorado about 8 months out of the year, and San
Oh, well,
happens
there
to
you
run for
go.
about four. Yeah.
But you were saying writing, I'm saying writing. Writing
Oh, I
takes
guess
a lot of
both
your,
do. Yeah, writing
writing
takes
takes a
more
lot
than
of,
writing.
yeah, yeah, but
I
writing
had to
takes a
make
lot
that
of my
decision.
time writing,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm doing more
exactly.
and more. And I thought of a great idea for a series the other day, and one that's in fashion now. What's the well, American Primeval just started on Netflix.
Oh, I did a photo, interview for a magazine, another magazine I write for on Shawnee Purrier, who played the native, the
Uh-huh.
young native. It was brutal. It was brutal. That series was brutal.
Yeah, so I'm just into it, and it has too many spaces in it where you're waiting to finish talking, and then it has
Right.
total brutality of, not only was all their land taken, and they, every just, have you ever seen the picture of buffalo skulls piled in one pile high, about
Yes. Yes.
80
How we
feet high
killed all the
and
buffalo.
200
Yep.
feet around?
Yeah. It's
They
terrible.
figure if we kill all their food, maybe
Yep.
they'll leave here.
Exactly. It's terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, but I was very interested in the peacefulness of the Nez Perce.
Hmm.
Really zeroed in on Appaloosas and wanted to refine them. And you take an Appaloosa up into a treacherous, difficult mountain area, and they just stay dead calm and figure out how to get up there and take. And I love that about them, and I love the fact that the Nez Perce were peaceful, uh,
Hmm.
and ran forever from trouble just to not get involved. And Shoshone, I'm still sort of plugged in. That's a very big part of Montana. So
Hmm.
that series is kind of important to me, even though it's hard to get through. I
I'm
mean,
thinking there may be do a prequel, I've been told,
huh?
before they're trying to go to Utah initially. But I think that it should be a continuation of the three of them, their journey to California, which is where they all wanted to go to,
Mm, hmm.
which I think would be really interesting.
where they could join up with Trump's grandfather who started those whorehouses.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? We're not going to go political, but
Okay. Well, I'm just talking history. He came in on
no,
that
I know.
the
But as I
false
said,
passport.
I know where your wife stands, and I stand with her.
Oh, I love it.
Uh,
Thought I'd throw that in there, though.
I appreciate it. So is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, you have lived a life well lived, and you've had an incredible career. I mean, it's amazing, Jim.
I'll pick up on something that you asked me about because I started going over the pictures and suddenly I did Amityville and I'm out of work. And
Mhm.
2 years later, Aaron Spelling calls me and says, I want you to be the lead in Hotel. And I go,
Right.
well, geez, I don't really want to go back to television, every week, repetitious situation. And he said, well, I'll give you this, and I'll give you this, and I'll give you this, and I'll give you, and it was like, you want to shop on Rodale? That's fine with me. I said, well, I want to direct. He said, well, you're going to have to wait 1 year. And the
Hmm.
shows were picked up for the second year. And I know you've been there and you've done well. And he called me 1 year later. He says, okay, your directing job is up. I'd never directed professionally before. And we had been shooting, the studio was kind of mad at the company because it was a big production thing, but
Hmm.
been shooting till 8:30 and 10:30 at night. And wouldn't you know, the first day everybody went to the beach at 3 in the afternoon. And I sent them home, said, that's all I need. And that was all I needed because
Okay.
I learned from my dad who was sandbagging and how we hurry him up.
Uh-huh.
And my
Uh-huh.
dad was a penurious contractor. So I always look around and say, why are we waiting? Gee whiz. And I said, well, Jim, that's the way it is. And not the way it has to be. So I'm a real champion of making a movie with no money, keeping everything, staying on budget. I've directed 2 Hallmark pictures recently. And the last one, if you haven't seen Royal Hearts,
I've heard of it. You were in it as well, weren't you? You were
yeah,
the
yeah.
lead.
And
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
a Montana cowboy rancher who
Right.
inherits through his lineage a
Hmm.
kingdom in Europe and has to go. His daughter takes him there, and he doesn't want to. I just want to go home and
Yeah. Okay. I
makes a
will watch it.
cattle
Yeah.
ranch
Yeah.
out
Okay.
of the kingdom. It's an interesting thing, but I mean, I'm 2.4 million. I did this whole movie in Romania, and I kind of pride myself on being able to give them back their money.
Well, you've sort of run the gamut from characters to projects
Mm.
to life lessons, and this has been great.
Mm. And let me, before we finish, my
Okay. Yes.
my lifelong other love was flying, and then I get an
Yeah.
invitation from Stu Siegel to go down uh, to San Diego to to play a fighter pilot who has a team of 8 fighter pilots who
Was
do
that Pensacola? Was that
Pensacola.
Pensacola? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that was 3 years of just absolute
Yeah.
joy. And again, that was shot on no money. I think that was 800,000 an episode. And now they're talking about 20 million an episode on some of these things. It's just unheard of. I go, where is this money going?
But you really looked like you enjoyed it, and I thought the production value was great.
Yeah, I did. I did. So that was the last real series I was involved in. And I don't know if I'd want to do another. I just love going. I love a plane ticket somewhere to meet a bunch of
Yeah.
people I've never seen before, doing the job and getting out of there. And then, of course, once you're finished, to me, it's so great creating and me. But the day after, it's day old bread and it's half price. And what's important is the next project, creating
Well,
that.
I'm looking forward to hearing what the next project is. Is it going to be a directing project, do you think, or are
I
you not
hope
sure? Because
so.
I know,
That'd be my first choice.
yeah.
The other is fun, but
Oh,
marching in place.
well, you also, I won't go, but you had a not terribly big, but a very interesting road traffic, a movie that I love, which was also a really hard movie.
In traffic. Yeah,
Traffic,
traffic.
yes, that was a tough,
Yeah, but I wasn't in a lot of that. I was just in a few,
right.
really a few scenes. I
But
think I was
it
there
was a
10
pretty
days.
amazing film as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Happy spring, and I'm so looking forward to the audience enjoying Ransom Canyon as much as I did. I was lucky that I could binge watch it over a weekend, and so I really felt that it was fabulous.
That's one thing about these 8 and 10 hour things is they're like a movie that's not over yet, so
Exactly.
I do appreciate them actually if they're well done and again I hate to say it because he's taken all the business. I'm a real Taylor Sheridan fan
Well,
and
maybe he'll watch this and say, "Ah, Mr. Brolin, I have a role perfect for you,"
maybe if that's
because he's
well,
full of
yeah,
surprises.
that would be nice to say his words.
Yeah.
Some of his dialogue in Landman is so delicious and well done,
As is 1923.
as is
Yeah.
1923. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
You too. You look great, by the way, and
Thank you. So do you.
yeah, let's visit again
We
quickly.
will.
All right.
Okay.